Hello and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's weekly show coming to you live from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow, with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. We are broadcasting throughout the United Kingdom and across the world on all our platforms, bringing you quality pro-UK comment and analysis from 7 until 8 p.m. every Wednesday on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter and on TikTok. And welcome to everybody coming in on TikTok. The best viewing experience, as always, will be on youtube.com/UK A Force for Good. Please give us a like, please give us a share, please give us a follow. And if you're watching on TikTok and you're not following us, you're missing out, because we're going to be talking about our TikTok tonight, and it has been knocking it out the park in the last 36 hours, and we've received hundreds of new followers on TikTok. Going to tell you all about that coming right up in our packed program tonight. Hello to Debbie. Good evening to Debbie, and to What Does This Button Do, who goes, "We sure are British. Sturgeon and the SNP don't really care about breaking away and are just going through the motions as a means of siphoning money away for nefarious means and for lining their pocket." Well, that is a statement. What does this button do? That is certainly knocking it to them. Good evening to Marilyn and to Kat, who says, "Great to be here, looking forward to the show." Fantastic, so are we. And hello to Derek and Alan. And Harry says, "Good evening, AFFG and unionists watching. I hope all are well." Karaoke Ross says, "Better together" on TikTok. And Jersman says, "Good evening." And a chat there says, "Hiya mate, love everything you do here." Thank you, and we love to have people like you watching our show. Good evening to Kenny from East Kilbride and to Catherine. And we're going to be talking about various things tonight. We're going to be talking about the kind of catastrophe that the Tories found themselves in with their tax. And we're going to be asking, why do we have income tax anyway? You know, we've just spent the last 2.5 years noticing, being demonstrated to, that the government creates money out of nothing and can create billions. So why do they even bother with income tax anymore? But we'll be talking about that later on in the show anyway. But that would be something that Jeremy Corbyn fans might be interested in hearing, because we've certainly got our own opinions on that. Personally, I think income tax is an outdated tax. However, Kenny says, "What's happening with the mass resignations regarding the COVID inquiry?" Now, I've heard about that, but I haven't been keeping up with it, so I don't know. Somebody on TikTok there says, "Could you give a shout out to Finlay Jack, who is a young Conservative Party member who's had a difficult week?" Well, I'm sorry to hear that. And give a shout out to Finlay. Keep the British end up, Finlay. That's what we're messaging to you. Marion says, "Watching from Fife, love what you do." And Robert says, "Evening, Alistair. The ferry crisis from the SNP is just an example of their incompetence." That's for sure. We spoke about that last week. Anyway, talking about the RSNP, or what we like to call the Royal Scottish National Party, Her Majesty's representative of the Royal Scottish National Party, otherwise known as Nicola Sturgeon, was in Dunfermline on Monday for the occasion of Dunfermline being granted city status. So we're now able to talk about Dunfermline also as another great British city, the great British city of Dunfermline. And Her Majesty's representative of the RSNP, the Royal Scottish National Party, she didn't get a particularly comfortable welcome, although she handled it fairly well. That's to say, there were a few booings and so on, but there was a lot of cheering for the man of the moment, who was, of course, Prince Charles. And he turned up to a good crowd of several hundred there who had found out about it. We didn't even know it was on, okay? We would probably have gone along to wave one of our new flags, which says, as you can see, "God Save the King." Charles III. Okay, so we've got some of those coming into the office, and we'll be making good use of them, as of course we always do. So we would have gone along and displayed that for a start, but we didn't even know about it. So that just tells us, please folks, if you know stuff that's going on that you think we might be interested in your particular area, then always just message us, send us an email, send us a Facebook message, whatever. Do you know such and such is happening? Because chances are we don't know. We rely upon the great British public to keep us informed as well. But it was a very successful day. Charles came in, he did his thing, he signed the document that says you're now an official city, and everybody went home happy. We've got one or two pictures of him here. Let's have a wee look at them. You won't see these on TikTok, by the way, but you'll see them on everything else, Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. There he is. And just take a look at that picture there. See that lady there in the bottom corner with the Union Jack mobile phone cover? Just notice how that really adds to that photograph. It really brings it out a bit. And that's such easy activism to do. We always say that if you have a mobile phone, get a Union Jack mobile phone cover for it, because you're always pulling it out. You're always whipping it out in public, as they say. And people are always seeing it. And it's a talking point. It's a talking point. So do by all means get one. We sell various types of mobile phone covers ourselves, and you'll get them at our Teespring shop. We'll put the comments up, we'll put the link up there in the thread. But if you just want to do simple activism without even waving a flag, a mobile phone cover, a Union Jack mobile phone cover is bang on. And as you can see there, the photographer chose his position to get that mobile phone cover in that picture. So that was successful there. Okay, so another picture that we've got here. There you go, that's a good one. And again, the photographer would choose that to get the Union Jack that the boy is holding there, and also that's flying in the background. And I must say, I do think Prince Charles scrubs up well in a kilt. No question about Prince Charles. What am I saying? King Charles. King Charles scrubs up well in a kilt. Yep, next photograph. And there's a good one of them coming out of the City Hall. You know, if you don't have a Union Jack and you're a unionist, you should get one, okay, because you never know when you need it. And as we always say, it's better to have a Union Jack and not need it than to need one and not have it. And so you can get your Union Jacks for a very cheap price from us, okay, from us at our shop. We're selling these for a very generous, modest amount. Very generous to you. You can get these at our shop, and you can see the link in the thread. But they're always useful to bring out when you need to do it. And if you do it, you're almost certain guaranteed to get in the papers as well. Somebody says the Union Jack is only at sea. We prefer just using the term all the time. Harry says he agrees that Charles really does rock a kilt. And you've got to do it right, you know, you've got to do it right, because lots of people, they wear a kilt, but it doesn't really look good on them. It's one of these things that you need to, it works for some people, doesn't always work for others. Harry says he needs to remember to buy a Union Jack on payday. Well, you know where to get it from our shop, Harry. Good for you. Good stuff. So that was really good. Good to see King Charles here in Scotland again. I'm sure he's going to be spending a lot of time here, and no doubt meeting members of the Royal Scottish National Party at the same time. What else has been happening this week? Well, the Scottish Separatist Shuffles had their annual Smurfs outing, as we like to call it. The annual Smurfs outing, which was their wobble down the Royal Mile. And they've been having this on and off. They had a Smurfs outing last year, but they didn't properly organise it, and they didn't realise that there was roadworks on the Royal Mile, so they had to go round the bottom of Arthur's Seat, where they were seen by precisely nobody other than our counter and a few seagulls. And they got, how many did they have back then? they had 847. Well, this year, one of our people was on the Royal Mile, and we videoed and counted them in at 1,335, which was significantly fewer than the 7,000 which they pretended and hallucinated had actually been doing it. So valuable activity that we were engaged in last Saturday. Keeping an eye on these groups, because we've got to always be knowing what sort of size are they? Are they growing? Are they getting smaller? And are they telling the truth? Because, oh my goodness, we know that they don't tell the truth. They pretended there was 7,000 when there was in fact 1,335 of them. And they took 12 minutes to pass our counting point, which was considerably down on their high water mark in 2019. And we'll talk about 2019 later and show you some photographs of that particular day. But back then they got something like, well, I can tell you exactly, they got 11,286. And I'm reading from our list of numbers here, which appears in our magazine, our 20-page magazine, which looked at our previous 10 years of action, which includes keeping a close eye on the Separatist shufflers. Eric asks, Alan, has there been any movement on getting the Jubilee book from the school? We were talking about that last week. And Paul says they were claiming 10,000 in Cardiff, and they were. Now, last week we put a call out, we put several calls out for people in Wales to try to video the march. Not try to video this, because it's not even difficult, right? All you have to do is stand on an elevated position, such as the steps at the Queen's Arcade, or on a wall, or on a park bench, or on the top, on the first floor of a cafe or something like that. Just hold your mobile phone at the start of the march and keep it held in the same position until the end of the march. And if you can do that for like 10 minutes, then bang, you've got a video, and you've got a video that you can count. But apparently there's not a single person yet in the whole of Wales capable of doing that, which was a wee bit of a disappointment. However, maybe in time, people who are for the Union in Wales may think to do that and put it online so that other people can count it. But until then, we have to go along with the false narrative of 10,000 being there. Now, from the videos that we've seen, we would very much doubt that it was much over 2,000, but we can't say for sure on that until we get a good video. But unless somebody in Wales has bothered themselves to do that, then it will be the narrative of the nationalists which dominates, because that's how the world works. And the nationalists don't have to be telling the truth. They can be making up a complete lie, but the BBC, if they don't have an alternative, then the BBC will simply put it out as 10,000, which is unfortunately what they've done, and which will be written into history without a counter narrative. We know somebody who has, talking about that book, we know somebody who has got that book today and says that it's lovely. So I'm glad to hear that. Christopher says hallucinated is about right. Now remember that the Scottish AUOB is teaching the Welsh AUOB how to do it, and how to do it is apparently just to lie through your teeth, knowing that nobody's going to contradict you until somebody comes along with a mobile phone footage that can be easily counted. Yeah, absolutely. Eric says they must have included all the sheep and cats. What does this button do? Says no Smurfs on my turf. Alan says, I see Mark Drakeford says no need for a COVID inquiry as the world has moved on apparently. Watch Sturgeon follow suit, then they will both demand Truss has one to make her look bad and they get off scot-free. Eric says, surprised that Wales for a United Kingdom didn't do the count. And Christopher says, lies are truths to a Scottish nationalist. It really is 1984 for them. Kiyoshi Kawashi wonders if a Labour government will reverse the trend, by which is meant reversing the Scottish nationalist trend. That depends, Kiyoshi, whether or not the Labour Party, if it were to be elected, continues to give more powers to its political opponents to use against them. And, for example, if Keir Starmer were to be elected in Westminster, and if he were to say, right, we're going to give even more powers to essentially the Scottish National Party, then of course he would not be stopping the trend. He would just simply be fueling the trend towards separatism. So it just depends how the Labour Party approach things. And one thing we know about the Labour Party is that it never learns. It never learns, okay? It never learns from its mistakes. 100 years, it never learns from its mistakes. So history doesn't bode well, but maybe Keir Starmer will be the different man, and maybe he will have learned from Labour's mistakes. We're going to talk about Keir Starmer. Yeah, we're going to talk about the Tories and this disastrous kind of carry-on that went on with their tax debacle that they were not willing to stand by. Lots of comments to make on that, actually. But before we do that, I just want to report on a really good thing that happened to us in the last 36 hours. One of our videos that we put up on TikTok went viral, and when I looked at it before the program began, it had 273,000 views. 273,000 views, and it has raised, in the last 36 hours, we've brought in over 800 new followers to our TikTok platform. And we're going to just play the video in a minute, so you won't see it on the TikTok live, but it is a wee bit of Neil Oliver speaking, and our TikTok curator cut this interview perfectly and put up a perfect a slogan as well. And as soon as it went on, it just started getting the views, and it never stopped. And at one point, it was getting 500, 1,000 new views every minute. It went absolutely crazy, and it's still rising, and we're still getting new followers coming in every minute on TikTok. So let's just play that
Scotland
video.
Most people don't like the SNP and Nicola Sturgeon.
How dare you?
But but down here, you're invited to think that all Scots
love the
SNP, and they don't, and they never have. There's never been a majority in Scotland that wants to break up the United Kingdom. Never. It was a high water mark at some point, but it was still not anywhere near overturning the Union. But I can completely understand why people down here would be given to understand that, that Scotland desperately wants what Nicola Sturgeon wants, and they don't. But that's just a product of the fact that Nicola Sturgeon's SNP have been very successful in loudly broadcasting their minority view for long enough that people down here think it's the majority view, which it isn't, which it never was, which it never will be.
Which it never was, which it never will be. Oh, that was just so on the money, that particular video. And that was him in conversation with Lawrence Fox. And we'll put the link to the whole video up there in the comment thread. You'll find it there. And it's for over an hour, and he makes a lot of very good points about the way that the country is going. And some people might, Neil Oliver is not party political. Obviously, he's a unionist, but unionists are not party political. We're of all parties. But he makes a lot of good comments about what's happening in the wider world as well, with the particular problems that have been going on in the last couple of years with globalised medical attitudes. I'm choosing my words very carefully here, obviously, because the system wants to shut people down who are not with them on those matters. But yeah, that's our TikTok. If you're on TikTok, go to UK A Force for Good. TikTok.com/@ UK A Force for Good. That's us. Please give us a follow, folks. Now, talking about TikTok, we have a dedicated professional TikTok curator who is posting almost every day, certainly 5 times a week. And this person has brought our TikTok from 0 to approaching tonight 7,000 followers. And I've lost track of how many million views we have got on that channel. But this is a professional TikTok curator. We need this person to be retained with us. So if you think that that has a value, that our messages are short form videos that we take and cut and put out on the TikTok platform, if you think that has value, please do consider making a donation to us at aforceforgood.uk/donate to, because we need to hire this person year on year, month on month, week on week, and we can only do that with your help. So please do help us to do that, because TikTok is unlike Facebook, TikTok is a much younger demographic as well, and we have to stay on there and we have to continue to produce these great videos. And what happened as a result of this huge upsurge from this viral video is that all our videos, all the ones, the hundreds that are on there, are getting upticks in views today. Something that was maybe 700 views yesterday, today it's over 1,000 views, that sort of thing. So we're really delivering as Liz Truss or Tony Blair would say. Alan says Labour are killing it in the polls. There's no denying it. Hopefully the polls change. For some crazy reason, the SNP are predicted by polls as a wipeout. Can't get my head round it. I think Labour will try some pact with the Lib Dems. Possibly. Who knows? Or it could be a hung parliament. Well, it's coming up to the bottom of the hour, so it's time for On This Day in British History Matters. On This Day in British History Matters. And I was thinking about that. Somebody goes, Alistair, you at A Force for Good, you put out historic posts every day on Facebook and Instagram about what happened on this day. Why do you do that particularly? And I thought, well, let's have a canned answer to that. And basically the purpose is to tell the British story. And by telling the British story, in so doing, to inspire and to encourage people to see the value of the United Kingdom and of being British. That would be my canned answer. Because if we don't have a British story to tell, then do we even have a British nation? Bear in mind that nations are as much of the imagination as they are of the physical realm. So you need a story to tell about your nation. And so we're telling the British story. We're recalling to memory the British story. Weaving together the connections of us all from all parts of the British Isles, from all parts of our islands, creating a story out of that, a quote, fuller and richer story about our land. So that's why we concentrate on history, to tell the British story. And one of the British stories that needs to be told is today. Did you know that today is officially James Bond Day? Why is it James Bond Day? It is because today, on the 5th of October 1962, that most iconic of British heroes was unleashed upon the world. Unleashed upon the world. Into public consciousness when the very first James Bond film, Dr. No, was released at the London Pavilion, which is now the Trocadero. And there's one or two posters here of the Dr. No film that we've got there. There's one of him and Ursula Andress in the background, and the bloke in the background there with the with the thing over his face, and the dragon tank in the bushes. So another one as well. There you go, I like that one, that's a good design. Ian Fleming's Dr. No, starring Sean Connery as 007, and Ursula Andress, Joseph Wiseman, and Jack Lord. Goodness me, what that started. Who was to know? Okay. And after that film, in the book You Only Live Twice, we discover that James Bond's father was Andrew Bond from Glencoe. So James Bond was half Scottish, did you know that? And his mother was Swiss, apparently. And in fact, in the film Skyfall in 2012, James Bond travels back to his family home, which is meant to be in Glen Etive, to seek shelter. And it's also been suggested that it was Scottish soldiers who were the inspiration for Ian Fleming's character. There's Fitzroy MacLean has been suggested, David Stirling, the SAS founder, has also been suggested, and Lord Lovett, the British commando leader. All three Scotsmen have all been suggested as possible inspirations for Ian Fleming's James Bond character, which, as I say, was unleashed in a visual sense upon the world today on the 5th of October in 1962. And another thing that was unleashed upon the world well, not the first time, but for I don't know what time exactly, but it was, of course, a Force for Good's Thin Red Line on this day, on the 5th of October in 2019. We were on the Royal Mile, and we had a good crowd of folk that were there. We had a great day. We were keeping the British end up, flying the flag for the United Kingdom, while the Smurfs had their annual outing, trudging past us, trying to stagger up the Royal Mile. Actually, it was what most of them were trying to do. And that was the day in 2019 when Joanne Cherry, MP, totally, again, hallucinated. I mean, I don't know what kind of mushrooms these people are on, but she hallucinated that there was 250,000 of them, right? 250,000. This is an MP saying that there was 250,000 people on the Royal Mile. Well, we videoed them, of course, and we counted them, and there was exactly 11,286, which is a factor of 22 times less than what Joanne Cherry had seen in her dreams, right? 22 times less than what she was telling everybody. And that's a significant number fewer than the craziness that was travelling through her cerebral cortex at that particular time. So we've got one or two pictures of that particular event. Let's stick them up there because they're quite classic. There we go. That's a good one, and that's our poster that we were using that was detailing the fantasy figures that we had counted hitherto and the reality. And there you see that in Perth, simply about a month before in Perth, they had claimed there was 20,000, and the reality is there was 3,160. And you can count that. We've got the video that you can count easily, which is to be found on a Force for Good's website. And all the other figures there, Aberdeen, they pretended there was 12,000 when there was 2,563. All the way back down to Edinburgh the previous year when they had said there was 100,000 when there was simply just around over 12,000. So never trust the figures. Always trust a Force for Good for the truth. Okay, there you go. There's another one of our posters and some of our lads there with the flag. Now that's quite a good picture of me holding the saltire, and that's another angle with me draped in the saltire, which looks quite dramatic. There you go. It's a slightly stylized one from a mobile phone, which I like that. That's a good one as well. Okay, and in the background there you can see the Smurfs annual outing while addressing them and attempting to correct the error of their ways, as it were, in a gentle and diplomatic manner. And that's a chap there who likes to call himself the Silent Klansman, and one of our activists in the background who thought that she would take the rise from him by dressing exactly like him, but waving a Union Jack instead. That's a classic picture, and as you can see there, the Silent Klansman on the left is not happy about being upstaged by our tremendous activist. Good stuff. Good stuff. That was a good day out. That was a good day out. But, you know, this time round, it wasn't worth us getting out of bed, quite frankly, for the numbers that we knew were going to be there. And the numbers that AUOB knew were going to be there as well. You know, they have a calculation method which they've revealed in the past to know how many truly are going to be there. And it was round about that number that actually were there. But they don't let that on. But that's secret information that we know about. But we know that our exact count was approximately what they were expecting. We know that for a fact. Okay. So that was good. Now just talking about, before we move on, that photograph. There we go, of a Force for Good's Thin Red Line on the Royal Mile is available as a greeting card, and a set of 5 can be yours. They're found at our shop. We'll put up the link to the shop there, and we've got several designs of greeting cards, and we've got more that are in the pipeline as well, but that's a good one. Harry says, I do love seeing all the Union Jacks showing the people for the Union. Not a union that is primarily English like nationalists like to think. Well, that's absolutely so. Absolutely so. Some of the Scottish nationalists have this totally wrong conception of what the United Kingdom is. I was reading this today in the National, because I read the National so that you don't have to, and the letter writers are just, they're like beyond help, some of them. I mean, they sort of they imagine Scotland as like some sort of colony, you know. We addressed this in one of our Busting Indie Myths, but they really do believe that, and this is like old people who should know better. You know, these are people who are, you know, they've gone through the whole life, and they're saying, I hope that Scotland will be independent before I croak. And I'm like, sorry mate, you know, you're going to have a better life goal than that, because you're going to end up disappointed. And, you know, then you'll read on, and it'll be like, oh, Scotland's a colony. Like, you went through 85 years of your life thinking Scotland was a colony. Like, are you blooming retarded or something? You know, how could you go through life thinking that? And being okay with yourself, thinking something that's not true? That really, it's upsetting. But you do get a wee bit kind of angry with them, because it's like, not, you know, just understand reality. Instead of living in this false reality. Talking about false realities, a few things to say about the Liz Truss fiasco, right? The first thing I want to say, and I want to say straightforward like that, we as a Force for Good, we don't have a political opinion on what party you should support. And if you're a Tory, fine. If you're Labour, fine. If you're Lib Dem, fine. If you're SNP, please don't be. If you're Green, well, please grow up, you know. But other than that, we do take an objective view on things. And I'll be frank, personally, I don't know if it's a good idea that people over 50,000 should have their tax rate reduced from 45 pence in the pound to 40 pence in the pound. I mean, how am I meant to know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, I'm not an economist, and even if you ask a room full of economists, you'll find out that half of them think it's a good idea and half of them think it's a bad idea. So it's one of these things that people like you and I don't really have the ability to make a decision on, and indeed, why should we? It's well beyond our pay grade. But what I would say is, if you're a politician and you say that that's what we're gonna do, then you should be able to make a case for that, and you should be able to stand by it, and you should not allow yourself to be browbeaten by the media into doing a U-turn on it. I mean, that was just incredible what we witnessed. But what I also thought was very interesting was that the media already had it in for Truss. Whatever you think about her and her taxes, they had it in for her straight away. And you know that by the sort of questions they ask. Now, when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, the interviewers would treat the politicians fairly respectfully, in the sense that they'd sit down with, say, Margaret Thatcher or whatever, and they'd ask her probing questions intended to get her to explain her ideological position. And she would make a case for what it was that she believed in, okay? And you could take it or leave it, but she was making the case for it. But that was also because the interviewer was asking questions which enabled her to do that. When you look at the questions now that are always asked of politicians, they're never investigative questions intended to solicit an answer which will help to clarify matters. They're not investigative questions, they are attacks. And you know they're attacks because they are based upon false or biased premises. Let me give you an example. And this went viral on social media, and it's what made me think about this. She was asked on Sunday, on the BBC programme Sunday with Laura Kuenssberg. First question that Laura Kuenssberg asked was, how many people voted for your plan? By which she meant how many people voted for the mini budget. Now, she knows, and Liz Truss knows, that the people of this country don't get an opportunity to vote on a mini budget prior to it being announced. So that's a question that is asked from a false premise, the idea that people get a vote on a mini budget before it's announced. That doesn't happen. So asking a question, how many people voted for your plan, is to ask a question based on a false premise. It doesn't deserve an answer. And so Truss was, of course, caught off guard, and she's like, what do you say to that? And no doubt waffled about it. But she shouldn't have to answer that, because that shouldn't be a question. If you're sitting down with an interviewer, you don't want questions based on false or biased premises. You want a question which will enable you to justify why you're doing something. And so what you get, and then she sat down with some STV, I think it was STV reporter, and this STV reporter goes, do you enjoy chaos? That was her question. Do you enjoy chaos? What? I mean, how is a politician, any politician, meant to answer these gotcha questions? It's incredible. So I actually tweeted out, these politicians would be better just talking directly to the public rather than going on and making fools of themselves on national television in front of journalists who are only out to attack you. Anyway, that was that. And of course the Tories didn't help themselves either, because they then backed down on it. They then backed down and said, oh, sorry, we're wrong to reduce the tax by 5 pence for people on 50,000 or over. I mean, so everybody's left thinking, well, they can't even defend their point of view. So they come out of it very, very badly. Very, very badly. And they either didn't think it through properly from the beginning, or they were unwilling to stand by it, or they were willing to stand by it but they couldn't articulate it, or they were willing to stand by it but they were so afraid of the media that they thought they'd better do a U-turn. I mean, whatever way it was, it reflects very badly. So we are burdened here in the United Kingdom by bad politicians on all sides, okay? I'm not having a go at the Tories as such, but because the SNP are just as bad. But goodness me, the quality of politicians that we have these days is not what it could be. It's not what it could be, but I'm not anti-politician. We have to hope for the best for all of them. We have to try to encourage all of them. They're all in a difficult job, and but let me give them some advice here, right? And this is another thing about income tax. Why are we, who don't know one way or the other, debating whether or not it's a good idea to reduce income tax from 45p to 40p in the pound? Because, as I say, none of us really know the rights and wrongs of that. How about debating, why do we have income tax in the first place? Okay, we have a government, a political system that's been creating money out of nothing to the tune of billions of pounds in the last 2 years. So why are they asking we the people to give them any money at all? You know, how about that debate? Why do we have income tax? You know, prior to the bankers' bailout, which again was done with money created out of nothing, prior to that, most people thought that the government created money, but the government didn't actually create the money. It was the banks that created the money. But by the time the bankers' bailout came along, the private banks couldn't create any money, so the government had to create the money. And so from that moment onwards, the government started creating money, which is its perfect right to do. But it didn't change the fact that it was still taxing people. So here we have a government creating money out of nothing. Think about this. It's not owed to anybody. It doesn't need to be paid back. So why are they asking us to pay it back through our taxes at all? Now, I know, of course, that it's far more complicated than that, but not a lot more complicated than that. And that's a debate that we should be having. Why do we have income tax? Why are people, whether they're on 14,000 a year or 140,000 a year, why are they being taxed for working? That should be the debate. We should be moving towards that if we want to grow as a nation and as a people, and also grow in consciousness and not remain slaves for the rest of our lives. We should start to be asking those questions and demanding that debate instead of arguing with each other over stupid things like, should the income tax be lowered by 5 pence for people who are earning over 50,000 a year? So that's the first thing. We should be moving the income tax debate on to why do we even have income tax? And secondly, we should be looking at the power of these financial markets to cause chaos in the markets. And this is a very important point as well, because we've seen this week the extent to which anonymous so-called financial markets can actually cause real-life chaos to a nation's economy. So we should be asking, who are these people and how are they doing it? And is it legitimate for them to be doing this in a democracy? And if it's not legitimate, then how do we stop them doing it? That's the sort of thing that we should be talking about. Instead, again, we're allowing the debate to get bogged down into technicalities that most of us have no real proper understanding of in the first place. So, in particular, let me just clarify this. We should be looking in particular at the ability of hedge funds to borrow huge amounts of money in order deliberately to speculate, that is, to buy and sell currency, and thereby distort the value of the national currency with money that they don't even have. Okay, so this is a thing that hedge funds can do. Now, there's arguments for and against hedge funds, but one thing they should not be allowed to do is to speculate with money that they don't have. If you're a hedge fund, you can go to a major bank or financial institution, and you can borrow money deliberately to speculate against the pound, to deliberately buy and sell currency on borrowed money, on money that you don't have. And that speculation can destroy a nation's economy, and that's been allowed. It is a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. Whether you're left wing or right wing, that shouldn't be allowed, because it's got no economic value to anybody other than the winners of that particular casino game. So banks, the way you sort that is banks should not be allowed, and financial institutions should not be allowed to lend money for the purposes of currency speculation. You get that sorted out, you would have a lot more of a stable currency, and you'd have more stable markets. When I was younger, I wrote a lot about this for 10 years, and a lot of my writings are still out there on the internet, and it's not something I've revisited, but I'm beginning to think I really ought to start revisiting that on a personal level, because there's things that need to be sorted out as far as that's concerned, and this might be the time to do it. And I noticed, interestingly, Neil Oliver released a 10-minute video last week, talking about the need for looking at how the money markets work. And that's a constructive debate that the nation ought to have. We were sort of having that debate after the bankers' bailouts, which were back in 2008, 2009. People were saying, well, where's the justice in that? And you had these movements like Occupy Wall Street, which were coming from the left. And in America, you had movements like the Tea Party Republicans, both of whom were questioning the financial system in their own way and trying to seek a more just financial system. Well, what happened to them? They kind of fizzled out. And one of the reasons they fizzled out, and this was brought to my attention in a TikTok video this week, is that by 2011, 2012, the debate had moved into all this woke carry-on. You know, the debate had moved into talking about racism and talking about gender division and all that sort of stuff, and it had been totally derailed. This person was suggesting that the debate had been derailed deliberately. I don't know about that, but certainly it's a debate that didn't properly achieve what was suggested by its potential. So we need to be starting to look at those things again. And that's whether you're left wing or right wing, whether you're Tory, Labour, Lib Dem or SNP. Because at the end of the day, you can have great ideas, but if money markets can borrow unlimited sums of money that they don't have, and then use it against your national currency, then you're going to be in trouble, regardless of how well you are trying to manage the economy. Good. Well, folks, I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Great for all the comments that were on TikTok. Thanks, folks, for that. And we'll be here every Wednesday between 7 and 8 p.m. Folks, it's been a blast. Thanks to all the comments tonight. I hope you've found them entertaining. I hope you've had a good hour. And just remember this, that, you know, the United Kingdom has been around for hundreds of years. It's going to be around for eternity. We've got problems at the moment, as we always do, but we will sort those out because we are British and getting the job done is what we do. So until next week, it just remains for me to say, God bless the United Kingdom and God save the King. See you next week.